Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for the panelists for doing this with us. My name is Kelsey Mitchell. I'm a music supervisor, and I also run the DEI committee for the Guild of Music Supervisors. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you all for being here. Just wanted to cover some housekeeping things. This is the second to last panel of the year from the Guild. The Guild's last panel will be next week. It's actually a mental health and wellness panel, Thursday, December 10th at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's with a 34th generation monk. And he will be conducting a 30-minute inspirational chant. And I honestly can't pronounce this word, Qigong session. Sounds pretty amazing. That is open to everybody. And tomorrow there is a happy hour with Dangerbird artists, Matt Costa, Sloth Rest, Seawolf. That is closed to members. So please sign up for that if you're interested. And if any of these panels have been awesome for you guys or interesting to you guys, and or you wish that you could actually join in that happy hour, please consider joining the Guild of Music Supervisors as a member or as a friend of the Guild. And before I get started by interviewing the moderator, I just wanted to handle a couple definitions. We've chosen to call this panel Latinx. Just wanted to cover quickly what the difference between Latino, Latinx, and Hispanic is. Again, language is evolving, and everybody has different ideas about what they accept for their own, how they classify themselves, and that's completely up to each individual person. The committee decided to go with Latinx because Latino refers to people from Latin American countries, but excludes people from Spain. Hispanic actually means derived from the Spanish language, and it includes people from Spain, but it does unfortunately exclude people from Brazil or people who speak indigenous language of Latin America. So we decided to go with Latinx, the X instead of the O or the A, because it's also gender inclusive and inclusive of queer identities. So that is why the DEI committee decided to go with Latinx. But if you don't know what term to use ever, the best course of action is ever just to ask the person what they prefer. A lot of people prefer terms that are a lot more specific to their home countries. So when in doubt, just ask. And moving on, I wanted to introduce our moderator, the wonderful Myra Cortez. She runs Latin Sync at Universal Pictures Publishing and working solely with Latin artists across all genres of sync, TV, film, advertising, everything, and been doing that for a few years now. So go ahead and take it away, Myra.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, and hello, everybody. It's awesome to be here helping with this panel, and thank you to the Guild for making space for us to talk about, not only our amazing music, but also our culture, and of course, like music supervisors and people who are working in this industry who, have been like paving the way for the next generation as well. So thank you very much. My name is Myra Cortez, and I work at Universal Music Publishing, doing strictly sync pitching from our amazing Latin roster and the roster from Spain as well. So let's just get to it, and I'm gonna just ask everybody to introduce themselves and to say what projects that they're working on right now, starting maybe with Areli.
Thanks, Myra. Hi, my name is Areli Girarte. I am the Senior Vice President of Music at Paramount Pictures. I've been there for about 2 years now. Previously, I was at Fox Films, where I worked there for 12 years. Upcoming projects that I'm finishing up right now is an animated feature called Rumble, which is slated to come out hopefully May of next year. And I'm also working on Damien Chazelle's upcoming film called Babylon, which is really exciting. But yeah, we manage on the film side, Paramount Players, Paramount Animation, and the Paramount Main Division. So we're basically the music department for the studio.
Amazing, thank you so much, Areli. Lila?
Hi, I'm a music supervisor. I'm based out of New York, but I'm in Austin currently during pandemic times. And I'm single with my business, so I'm not a big company. But my latest projects, I just finished Here Comes Rusty, that just came out a long time. it took to get it out, so I'm happy about that. And Fugitive Dreams, which is doing the festival circuit as what it is now. That's actually out of a film crew from Austin. And then I have a few advertising projects, and that just finished up because of holidays. And last, a VR piece that I worked on is going to become a regular flat cartoon animation. So we're working on that one and clearing the music.
Thank you so much. Georgette?
Hi, I am Georgette Bivens, and I am the Senior Business Affairs Manager for Panay Films and Black Ops Agency. We are a hybrid ad agency. So our clients are T-Mobile and Microsoft. So currently have been during the pandemic, nothing has slowed down. So we have been nonstop since we have two clients that are essentials. So it's, telemobile and computers. So, and we've just been nonstop working on them. And I'm based in LA.
Thank you so much. Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm based in Mexico and Spain. I'm working in Selena, which is being released in these couple of days, if I'm not mistaken. What day is today? The 4th, I think, this next weekend. I'm working in a film about Billie Holiday with Lee Daniels and a couple of other projects. I'm finishing a German show called Tribes of Europe and a couple of other shows and movies.
Amazing. Thank you, Lynn. And I know Joe and Javier are a duo, but let's go with Joe first.
Hi, I'm Joe Rodriguez. I'm a co-founder of Indice, along with my partner, Javier Nuño. I think we'll have a thing that we might be repeating some of the same things because we work in every project together. I do the creative part of the music supervision, mainly on for movies and television series. We did the music supervision for Los Spookies, and we're working on several projects right now, like a movie called The Gigantes. We had started working on season 2 of Los Spookies, but obviously because of the pandemic got suspended, and we have several projects right now. What am I missing, Javier?
Okay, I'm Javier Nuño, and I handle, well, we are based in Mexico. I handle all the clearances and administrative work. And the projects that we are working on, it's Quien Mató a Sara is one of those for Netflix. Una película de policías, which is an amazing film by Alonso Ruiz Palacios. No Porque Me Enamoro, and the ones that Joe tell you.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your current work. So there's a lot that we want to talk about, and we have a very short amount of time. But the first thing that I'd like for all of us to discuss is that obviously, there has been like a surge of like Latinx content here in the US, and of course, like, a plethora of like productions externally in Latin America and more. So I just wanted to discuss, like, how do you guys think that our music and our culture is impacting the surge of these productions? And if you'd like to share something that you personally have done in a project, and that being in a major project or a small project that utilizes like your innate knowledge about Latinx culture. I'd love to start with Arely, because like your amazing project with J Balvin for SpongeBob, I think is like amazing and revolutionary. We just saw the clip, so I'd just like to know about your process and like, what were you thinking about when you came up with this idea?
Absolutely. So, working on SpongeBob Sponge on the Run was definitely a lot of pressure because the brand is so iconic and it has been around for 20 years. And the two prior films before us had amazing music, so we knew that the pressure was on. Like the last movie had Pharrell Williams working on the music. So we knew we wanted to come in and provide something that would be able to reflect society really, and be very inclusive. And also looking at the data and understanding our consumer, it was interesting to learn that the people that over-indexed on SpongeBob were the Latin community. There's a beloved, just a love for the IP, and we wanted to give something back to the community. So really, the idea started with how do we refresh the SpongeBob theme? And it was the 20th anniversary. So we knew we wanted to provide something that was going to be relevant, but still maintain the authenticity of the original. And, with the passing of Stephen Hillenburg, we wanted to make sure that it was a tribute. So really the process started with understanding that we wanted to do something in that space. And from there, it was a couple of meetings that led me to meet with Lex Borrero, who co-founded Neon 16 with the producer Tiny. So we brought them in, they watched the movie, they absolutely loved it and said, we definitely want to do the remix of the SpongeBob theme, but we want to do more than that. And we want to do a soundtrack with you guys. And that's really where our relationship started. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, I provided the theme stems to Tiny, and he came back with a track which sampled the original SpongeBob theme. And from there, we were able to, series of communication with the studio, the director, the filmmakers, were able to get it to a good enough place where we knew we needed an artist. And one of the artists that we wanted to work with was J Balvin. And J Balvin, just a mega star and somebody that was already slightly integrated into the SpongeBob world. He had done an art collaboration with Nickelodeon. So, and he loved SpongeBob alongside with Tiny. And we felt that the pairing of those two was just going to be an absolute smash. So sure enough, Balvin, was in Colombia, in Medellin at the time. This was all during the pandemic. So we were able to get him into a studio. And yeah, very quickly, we're able to mobilize him to give us his rap, which was amazing. And it was a series of back and forth. And the most exciting bit of it was that the song is all in Spanish, as you heard, which is pretty much a first for the brand and for SpongeBob. And I'm so thrilled that Paramount got behind it, as well as the filmmakers. And we were able to do a music video to roll out the song, which is just an incredible display of the connection. And the song has now gone on to collect about 1 billion streams since it launched. So it's just, again, for us, it was like an indication that, we're doing the right thing and that this is an audience that is craving this kind of material. So we're really excited that it was able to materialize.
Thank you so much for that insight. And of course, the song is doing amazing. It's on the charts, and, congrats for that work. I'd like to also extend like the kind of like similar vibe and question to Georgette. I mean, you worked in advertising for a long time, and of course your background in Disney. Like, I wonder if you have any insights or like any thoughts about how, Latinx music and culture is also impacting the advertising business.
Yeah, thanks. I see it now, like been exploding. I want to say like the past year and a half. And a few years back, I worked for an ad agency that was a diversity ad agency. It was African American and Latin. And at that time, it was like 3-4 years ago, it was still, even though we were doing all of Lexus for the Hispanic, for the Latin ad agency, we were still following suit with the music, the content, everything was still everything that the American market advertising agency was doing. So it was all the background music, which wasn't translating. So it was all instrumental. It wasn't, it didn't have anything that you would see per se in, you know, a commercial that you see on Univision now. And so I've seen it change a lot with ad agencies. Like right now with us, we work with an ad agency called Cornel, and they do all of the Spanish ones. So I'm seeing now that they're having more of an input on, can we see more of this? Or can we, hear this? Does the music cross over? And that's the big thing with advertising. It's, does the music cross over? Can it relate, if it's an instrumental version, can it relate, say, in Mexico, or can it relate, say, in Baja? Is it relating going across the board? So we're seeing more of that, and it's a good thing. And like I said, like from just a few years ago, where they were like, oh, this is what Lexus USA did. This is what we're doing. All we had to do was just switch out the voiceover to say it in Spanish, and that was it. Like we'd have to use the same music, everything. And then it's good to start seeing now, a surge in the awareness of it. It's not, relating to that, to this area or stuff. So now that they're starting to do that, it's welcoming, it's embracing, and I love it.
Thank you so much for that insight. And yeah, definitely the advertising industry is shifting in that way, and to like making more space to include like more lyrics, more, like emotion behind. For multicultural. I like everybody to talk about this. So like, I'm going to pass it to like Joe and Javier. And I know that this looks really different and also for Lynn, but I would like for Lynn to discuss her own thing. Like this is for Javier and Joe. Like you all are based in Mexico. So of course, like the concept of Latin music is not really like Latin music, but it's like, like it's not really like another kind of situation. But I'd like to know from you guys, like in a show like Los Spookies that is like so unique and like spooky, like what kind of like, how does like your Latinidad play a part in your music supervision, aside from the narrative being like in a Latin American country?
Go, please.
Okay. I guess the concept of Los Spookies from the beginning was like really fun, because it's this kind of dark, in a comedic kind of way, Latinx people. But we wanted to give it like a non-cliche approach to the music, not like what is typically associated with Latin American music, but we wanted to give it like a kind of a dark wave twist to it, but not in a very serious kind of manner. It had to be kind of funny. And I mean, exactly, I think it was very natural for us to work in that project because of the fact that we are Latin Americans, and we don't see things like as Latinx. Maybe we see it more like, oh, this is Mexican, this is from Chile, this is from Colombia, this is from each different country, where we can sometimes perceive like some kinds of differences because of the type of sounds the music has. But I think when we were choosing the songs, we weren't thinking about picking them from a specific country. We were thinking them based on the needs of each scene. So it was like really fun just to select the tracks based on what we needed for each scene, lyric-wise, mood-wise, and everything.
And I would like to add about Los Spookies that mainly Joe chose everything, but the Los Spookies has a specific sound. Like after Los Spookies, we receive a bunch of emails and like, check out these bands, and it is like really specific. It has to be like dark, but not that dark. We used in the series like some of Latin cliches in I think in 2 or 1 scene in the I remember the party. And the telenovela scene, yes, the telenovela scene of Ana, and but I think it has a specific sound. It has, we love when they presented to us. We love the concept. We love how it was so clear for Julio, Ana, and Fred, the concept. And when they passed it to us, it was like so easy to just add music to that. Like the main theme, Ellos Quieren Sangre, it was like no doubtable that it was like that specific song for the main theme. And yeah, I think that what we most love in the projects is to work with that particular sound and to make a concept and not going just like Joe said, like Latinx and going for specific countries. And yes.
Thank you so much for that insight. And I know that, Los Spookies is a super talked about show in the US. So like super congrats for that. I want to jump to Lynn. And of course, Lynn, like you have like a magnificent, resume of very iconic productions, including Roma and now Selena, which is definitely going to be a hit. And so same question for you, like, how do you think, like, because you work in so many kinds of projects, like not only Latinx projects or Latin or from a specific country, but you're also working on Tribes of Europa and like all these amazing different kinds of shows. Like, how does your knowledge and like inherent, Latinx and Hispanicness come to play when you pick the songs, and maybe particularly talking about Selena and Roma, that, super amazing and iconic productions?
I might sound rude, but there's nothing Latino in what I do, in a sense that we don't, and as Javier and Joe said, we live our Hispanic world in a different manner, because we don't have to question ourselves if we are American or Hispanics. So my point of view for things are on that base, which I'm sitting in a country and I'm working in a project that might need German music from 1957 as music from the 80s in Texas or in wherever Selena was in that moment. It all depends. It's not based on my Hispanic background. It's more based on the project needs. So based on that, the research and the amount of music that you accumulate in your life is what gives you the power to be a music supervisor. The rest comes with lawyer, legal, and knowledge of things that are current due to the complex music industry that we work on. But it's more on a life that you achieve, is a music knowledge that you achieve based on your life. And that you put it in context on the story. So it doesn't matter where the story comes from, what matters is the story. So if you start from that point of view, you can do a German show or a Jordanian show, or a Spanish or a Colombian. So it's not something that you feel as an Hispanic or a Latinx. I think that the situation in the US makes you be in that position, makes you feel Hispanic, makes you feel Black, makes you feel white. It's that because of that melting pot that happens in the US. And recently, thanks to this guy called Donald, that put everything more on the extreme sides of everything. So in order to be against that guy or in favor of that guy, I don't know nobody that is in our world in favor of that guy. This world that has come more polarized or polarizado between the right and the left, of what's right for certain people and what's wrong for certain people, puts you in that to understand stories from where you're coming from. So I don't feel that particular, I don't feel I belong to that particular world. I belong to a world where I see it more outside of the US. I feel more that it's when we ask for conditions for a license and you put world. In my condition, I put world except the US in that frame of mind. I hope I explained myself.
Of course, yeah, and thank you so much for like sharing that perspective as well. And I'm sure that Javier and Joe and any music supervisor or aspiring music supervisor that is watching this also like sees and understand that the U.S. is like a very different reality, and like I'm so happy to see and hear like that things are different, and sometimes even all us being Latinos, Latinx, Hispanic, or however we decide to identify, we all, have like a different perspective, and it's awesome to hear all of them. So thank you, Lynn. And last but not least, Lila, I know you work a lot in the fashion world and working with, brands like Coach. And so wondering like if you've seen like any kind of impact from like our culture into that particular world.
I'm going to pull your question into a different place because the answer is no. The answer in the fashion world is, I've got a moth in here, is dancing. It's usually more on the dancing point, but it moves with trends and it moves just like fashion does. So there's no particular point of reference to like a red coat. It's what the creative drives that. But I will say that on the advertising element in that whole situation, I have seen it evolve from going from a traditional sense where we've translated a song for Band-Aid and we did it in Mexico City to where, and I was at a agency that didn't handle Hispanic work, then going to another agency that actually did include the Hispanic network and had to do that work. And we had to have creatives that understood the translations and how to translate it. And not only how to translate it, but how to translate it to the generation of the US that we're speaking to, and which is on point on what was said about identity. So seeing that transition and then being able to work for a director that's from Argentina who did a film, Finding Sophia, that was basically all indie music. So I'm a lot American, but we did have cumbia queens. So you have that element of the culture within the film, and you wouldn't find that in the States necessarily unless you had a multi, my Greek wedding or something like that, where we're showing and explaining. So what I'm seeing in the transitioning is an understanding of what it means to be in the United States and what it means to be Latino, but we still have to understand that, because obviously with the latest politics and what was happening with the votes, they kept polarizing the vote of, I'm going to use Latino, I'm Chicana, I use Chicana. And I think it's an imperialist word of things that to put on Latino as a presence. I worked on a VR, and that same Argentinian director got to the States, which is probably a dream of most people, right? The crossover is the big thing for music. How do we cross over and make money? The crossover, and did a VR, and then Rosario Dawson was our voiceover for that. And that was a punk VR where girls invented punk is the whole theme of it. So they injected a person that is a big human, big activist, a big voice in the US, and then a big voice for our community. And in that, I'm seeing that people are getting more educated of what it means to be in the States, to be biracial, to be from different places, and to understand it and to understand who's what. We still have a long way to go, obviously, but in the initial beginning, they used to hire people from Mexico to do the work in Spanish here in the States, and that didn't work because as first generations, we're not Mexicans. And, and as pointed out, the United States is a melting pot that has a different understanding of who we are as a culture. And really, in reality, Latinos have been in the music world since jazz. So since 1941 and post-World War, we had a big influence. So it's kind of a false reality to say, oh, we've just been discovered, because we've actually been around, but it's actually the education of knowing who's what's from where, and what influences what exactly, and the integration of that, not assimilation, but integration.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned all of this, and of course, we can spend like a bunch of
Hours.
Like geeking out about like who was around in the 40s. Was it Lalo Guerrero? Was it, like, so thank you for sharing that. And touching a little bit on what you said and what Georgette said, I'd like to just open the floor for whoever wants to answer this question and chime in about what are your thoughts about the often asked, in briefs, sometimes there could be the phrase Latin with a global appeal, or Latin sounding or Latin leaning, and just wondering what is your position about that, and what do you think, or if you yourself sometimes have been asked to ask for that kind of brief, and just to see, do you think that paints us as a monolithic group, like a one sound, one thing, or what else comes to mind when that phrase comes?
Who wants to go? Gio.
You want me to go? I can go.
Go, you go. I know you got words.
I'm like, can you tell? No, you know what? I have been asked that, and I have always gone back and asked them, I get the Latin global, but what are you asking for? Are you asking for a pop Latin? Are you asking for, you come to me and you say, oh, Georgia, I want Latin global. I'm thinking, okay, somebody that's known across the world. So I'm thinking Julio Iglesias. Am I thinking Menudo? What am I thinking? I've always gone back to them and said, you need to be a bit specific on who. What are you asking for? What kind of music you're asking for? And do you want to touch everything that people from, and sorry for this background noise, my dad decided to measure things now in my house than a couple hours ago. Do you want music, when you're telling me Latin global, do you want it that people in the UK know who it is, and the people in Spain know who it is, people in Brazil know who it is, people in America know? Is that what you're asking me for, or are you asking me for a specific type of music? And it's always going back and just saying, because what's going to happen is when we go to Universal, Publishing Latin, or go to Sony or some, or to an up and coming and say, hey, we need this, they're going to come back to us going, exactly what are you looking for? So it's being a little bit more, to me, I always have to push back when they ask for a Latin global or a Latin feel. Oh, I can give you Latin feel all day, every day, but you obviously have something in your head, what you want. Tell me what it is and we'll go after it. Lila.
No, I think I have the same. I have the same pushback, and it touches upon what Lynn said. As authenticity, no matter what you're dealing with, right? You're going to deal with a period piece. You're not going to throw something in there that doesn't work out. So you're doing the same with this situation with authenticity, but the trends change, as we know, as we're talking about Hispanic, Latinx, and that the trends change. So they get this idea of Pan-American and who wants what. And it's also target audience. Where is this going to land? Is this going to be shown in Florida? Is this going to be in New York? Is this going to be California? Is this not going to be US? Is this going to be outside the US? And I think that idea of what's Latino, there people are, as I said, are still learning, but it's the pushback. It's exactly what Gio said. I have to do the same, but you kind of have to do the same with every music, right? If somebody came to you and said, I want funk, and you go, okay, well, let's go for it. Let's see where you're at. And it's probably the same with this, as far as who you're talking to, your audience. But as Lynn pointed out very, very much. And I agree that I don't know if that's not really the case everywhere. And we're still learning in this melting pot of people. So it's hard because you're usually not dealing with Latinos or Spanish speaking people. So that's the other thing too. And it's just getting them to learn. So it's kind of educating in reverse.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anybody else would like to chime in. If not, we can move to the next question. All right, we move to the next question. Thank you. So the next question is about particularly your own, style of supervising, and maybe if you can share a thing or two, and everybody can chime in, a thing or two about your process, and particularly if you find any kind of difference when you work on a project that is like multicultural or like for Hispanic audiences or like a inherently Hispanic Latinx content versus like one that is for foreign audience, that being like general, US market or the rest of the world. So we can go one by one, and then, you can answer whichever part of the question, but really, really curious about your particular process when you're starting and the differences between language and culture from the project. So why don't we start with Javier and Joe?
Okay. Okay, our process, we need to understand, we love to be involved since the street. And we mainly, we make a research about the characters, about the environment, about the specific, the years that it is the series or the film. And we start to, we love to make like a concept. In most of the projects, we love to make like a concept around. Obviously, we have like a separate cues that goes like all the way to not around the concept. And we start like browsing some ideas. So obviously talking with the director, showrunner, producers, and we start to pitching with making some lists. Joe loves to make long playlists in Disco or Dropbox or Spotify. And after that, we like set like the mood. And after we set the mood, like then we start like pitching. And I'm gonna pass the question to my partner, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think this also has to do a lot with the vision of the director and the concept of the show, because we could be working in a Mexican series, but maybe the sound, the director or what the script requires has more like a dark pop kind of sound, and that will work better in English. And it all depends really on the concept of the show. It's like understanding the director's vision after reading the scripts, maybe giving our point of view of what kind of sound we think would work well in each project. And also I can think of a show we worked on in Colombia called Colmenares, where we really had to do a lot of research because the director and the production company wanted to have a lot of like Colombian indie in it. And back in that time, we weren't so involved in what was going on in Colombia. So a lot of research had to be put into like getting to know the indie music scene there. So yeah, I think that basically sums up everything.
I want to add something to Joe. We had another Colombian project that was based in Pereiro.
Oh yeah.
Which is in the Eje Cafetero, and we didn't know about what type of music they hear. So we make a huge research about what they hear, because obviously if you think of Colombia, you think about cumbia, cumbia, champeta, salsa, but in the Eje Cafetero, they have like these kind of rancheras, they have bambucos. They have like a very specific type of songs that they're other places like Medellin or Pereira is like between Medellin and Cali, but they don't hear the cumbia of Medellin, neither the salsa of Cali. So we have to do like a really deep research of what they does here, because there were a lot of cantina music, or there was like a bar, La Cantina, and I remember a lot of taxis or music in the bus. So yes, we have to be specific in the place that is gonna be shot, and for us in Latin America, it is different if it's shot in Yucatan or in Monterrey or in Mexico City or in Colombia, in Medellin, Cali, or Bogota. I mean, it is completely different, the sound, and you have to go like really deep.
Thank you so much for that insight. That's amazing to hear that y'all go through all of these like periods of research. That's amazing. I'd like to extend the exact same question to Areli, but probably like also thinking about, you know, a lot of original music that you guys do for your films. So like, how is like a little overview of your, you know, process when you start?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, I probably have very similar process from the beginning as Joe and Javier just explained. You know, it's obviously, first and foremost, we're a vehicle for the vision of the filmmakers, right? I think that is something that is truly important to understand, that it is really, I have my own personal taste. You know, obviously it might not match, but again, I think very early on, you know, the music will be reflected in the scene, right? The scene will tell you what works, what doesn't work. And I think that that's the beauty about music, is it is a universal language, right? I think that the ability to connect everybody through music is something that is very important and inherently something that we use very frequently. But, you know, in addition to all of the research that goes into it, the breaking down of the scripts, the initial conversation with the filmmakers, you know, I also try to understand the landscape of what the movie is trying to say, maybe some of the thematic motifs that we're trying to uncover throughout the story, and then trying to see who we might want to align ourselves with as it pertains to any kind of artist. And, you know, I think we also have a great resource in our marketing team, and my multicultural marketing executive is somebody that I have a constant communication with, and we feed each other information about, you know, hey, this artist is resonating, or hey, you know what, I know you're going for this particular artist, but we really need help in this area to get to this audience. So, you know, more and more now I'm aligning myself with the marketing team as well to make sure that we're servicing not only the film, but the potential for the film to grow and extend outside of itself, you know. But yeah, as it pertains to original songs, you know, I've just worked on Rumble, like I mentioned, which is an upcoming Paramount film. And one of the characters, the main character actually loves to salsa dance. And that was one of his unique character traits. And, you know, it was, again, researching and understanding the difference between salsa, merengue, bachata, because, you know, before I came on, the director had a song that was merengue, you know, and I explaining the difference and the subtlety and the difference, and making sure that we remain authentic to the actual language of the music was important for him. And through that, we were able to work with Cheche Alara and Claudia Brandt to create an original song for the movie. And we created it from the ground up, and it's specifically tailored to the scene, to the very BPMs and everything. And, you know, so it's an ongoing process, obviously, but I think you'll know immediately when you put something up on picture if it works or not. And then I think everything else is just research and making sure that you're remaining authentic and aligning yourself with people, with artists rather, that have the same goals and the same values as your film. I think that's one of the things that I try to focus on as well from the beginning.
Thank you so much, Areli. Same for you, Lynn. Any of your projects do they ever have like different processes, or is it always the same beginning? Oops.
I'm sorry. Usually depends on the story, as Joe and Areli just mentioned, but also depends on the money. More and more money is an issue. I think we can be as creative as we want. We would love to have the research and put the champeta and the most extreme blues and country song from 1937 in the middle of Texas or Louisiana. But then we find out that we don't have the money, and that they're not willing to pay the $25,000 that they're asking for lonesome blues from 1937 that Universal and Sony wants. So we can be as creative and we can say here that we have a lot of ideas and research, but at the end it's coming more and more on the budget side, because we're facing something that I think it's very threatening to what we do, which is the library world. So more and more we find out that big companies all around the world, and more where we work with bigger companies, they're willing to pay less and less money for the shows. And music companies and publishers want to charge more for, not shows, but songs. So you send a song for Selena asking for something that was 1987 that's out in a restaurant that nobody knows, and the quote from Universal comes at $10,000 a side, right? My dear Myra. So what we're facing is producers that are extremely tense with what they need to deliver to the platforms, because right now the show comes from the big platforms instead of the big studios. And then we're facing that, can you please look at these 5 libraries that we have, exclusive, no fees, gratis for everyone. Yes, but they need Ranchero from 1997. I'm doing a show called Somos, and the show happens exactly in 2011, and get a regional Mexican music prior to 2011 that is not owned by big corporations is a nightmare. Or 70s in Spanish that is not owned by 2 majors that comes at $8,000, $10,000 when they really have $3,000 is becoming a hassle, because then you spend most of your time begging for fees less expensive, begging for answers on things that as are not expensive or not good quotes, you end up being in the end of the pile of the request to Myra Cortez in Universal. So all those things add the difficulty of trying to do our job the best way we can. I don't know if I answered the question, but I wanted to ramble about the...
I think we need a reduction on that quote, Myra.
No, I mean, I really super appreciate
less and less high as they are. So
I think that this is like amazing information, because obviously, you know, we like publishers and labels and music supervisors, we have like a loving relationship, but sometimes, you know, we have to fight for our own, you know, for our own agendas. And I think that it's great that, you know, young next generation of music supervisors are listening, that's a thing, right? Like it's a constant struggle for both sides, but at the end of the day, we love each other and we work together and we're family. So I think that we all always want to get to that like middle ground, and sometimes it's a little hard, but you know, thank you so much for sharing that.
Let me give you one more thing. We pitch the song to the producer and to the director or the showrunner. Then they go to Netflix. And then they all agree after seeing 10 or 11 proposals from us for scene, and they choose a song. And then we go back and try to deal with the clearance. And then we realize that instead of the 4,000, they're asking for 20,000. So it's becoming a nightmare pitching songs that you think you can manage and solve at the end. And because of your pitching the songs and you're coming back to ask for the quotes, is the high fees that becomes really difficult. So I see myself recently explaining to publishers and labels that you send me the music, I pitch it, I convince a lot of people, and then I go back to you and you say, oh, you know what, sorry, I cannot give it to you at 4, I need to give it at 10. So that hustle of going back and forth is damaging a lot of artists, because at the end there's another song. So also I would love to at some point claim some criteria from publishing and masters. When you go back and say they really want this song, but they only have 4,000, they only have 4,000. So if you don't take that 4,000, so another song is going to get it. So I feel more and more sometimes the big companies are losing a lot of money for artists just because of staying on quotes or they send you on a non-presidential, presidential is not, no presidencial, sino
Unprecedented.
No precedent.
Yes.
Exactly. But honestly, the money that there is the money that there is. And if you don't take it, there's another song that is going to end up using it. So instead right now of thinking of getting high fees, think of there's another song, they're going to find another song. So more and more you find options when you struggle for weeks and weeks for a quote, because you know that your director or your showrunner wants it. At some point you come back and say, these guys are crazy, we don't have the money, and there's other songs, and usually you change the song, and artists are losing that money.
Yeah, I want to add, I completely agree with Lynn, and I want to add that what in projects in development that are with majors, they don't see that the fees that the pitch, it means nothing to them, but not nothing, but a little bit for them. To change the quote a couple of bucks, but it means a lot for the artist to be in the film or in the series. And sometimes they don't see that for the artist it means a lot. And if they can just adjust a little bit, or they can adjust to what Linda said, that we just have that amount of money, that's it, and it means a lot for your artists.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would just say that I think one way of closing this this part of this question is that, and I totally agree with Lynn, is that part of the creative planning you do for a show has to include a strategic side of, like, what will I be able to pitch, knowing that the budget is this. You have this amount of money, so maybe you, in the beginning, before you knew the budget, you would say, this Radiohead would go great with this series. But when you know they have $3,000 for the whole chapter, then you go like, okay, Radiohead is not for this show. And you have to find things that will fit the budget and that will make the series sound very well.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, you all, thank you very much for sharing that, because I really feel like, particularly like the audience of this panel, like, can really learn from that, right? Like from that experience of like the back and forth and the clearance and like the tough negotiations sometimes. I don't know if Georgette and Lila would like to add something to this conversation as well.
You want to go first, or
Go, Lai, go.
okay, so politeness, eh? So no, I had to say that just recently, this was for advertising, because of the pandemic and the lack of theaters and everything going digital. I was told for a fashion quote, I was told by a major, getting internet like TV now. And I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not good for anyone, because it's not the same dynamic. Yes and no, but your attention span to social media, say on fashion, on Instagram, is not going to last like a film that's there forever. And to do that to your artist, I always, when I send my briefs, no matter what, if a label has told me we don't usually do this fee, I'll send briefs no matter what, and explaining that, look, you might have an artist that's hungry. They need to pay bills, and to protect that interest is in your interest as well. So I try to encourage it, because I know personally, from owning a venue and having all these musicians play there, I know that they're hungry, and I know they're my friends and everything, and I know how talented people are. So to be creative and to be able to look at your artist like that, as you're not in a major, and if you're at a more of a smaller sync agency, to understand that dynamic. And a big thing right now is happening is people are saying no to steps, because Netflix and all that have killed. There's no Variety magazine that can tell you box office sales, but at the same time, we should be able to track everything. It's all digital. And the fact that we were able to track something in some small hometown theater and they say they can't track it now, so that's why there's no steps. It's kind of ridiculous, and as a community we should be pushing back on it, because you're going to kill indie music, you're going to kill indie films, and they're already getting hit by the budgets, and people who are taking that on are the directors and productions and everything, and music is already squeezed enough. I agree, but it's just the education of that is really important, and knowing what you can do, and actually as being an artist, being vocal about that. I have a lot of composers I work with that I have catalogs, and they know if I can pitch it, it's like they're making money while they sleep. Why not? But it's interesting, because as we can see, the world is very small with all of us being here, right? And there's people from all over the world saying hello. That means there's that much content out there. So as you said, if somebody's not going to do it, there'll be someone else. So it's just about, I don't know, it's not about not being precious, because you have to respect your work, but it's just knowing that we're all working together, and it is what it is. And it's funny, because I've had things come back where it's like, especially in advertising, where it's like, oh, it's 3 months, but 2 months paid media. Oh, can you reduce it to 1 month? It's like, no, this is what they need. It's kind of a ridiculous ask. So that's that. I'm on basically the same boat as everyone. That one.
I right there with Lila. I've sat on both sides. So I've been the label, the publisher, and then I've been, the person asking for this stuff. And I've worked with Lila in the past where, her briefs come over and she's like, Gio, this is what I got. This is X amount of dollars, no more, no less. This is how much I have. And that way, me being publisher, label, knows like what to go into dig. Now being on, back in advertising and everything, music is the last thing when it comes down to advertising. A lot of the time when we are getting our music, they're worried about like, who's going to be in the spot, where are we shooting this and everything. And then all of a sudden music is the average, like, oh, let's find a song to go in here. And, if the spot is like a national spot that it's going to go across all the markets and everything. Yeah, they're willing and they have the money to go in there. But if it's going to be a quick offer spot that's going to run for, less than 13 weeks, trust me, they don't have the money. Then all of a sudden they're like, we're so poor, we have no money, this is all we have. And and us, especially here at Panay, we have this badass music supervisor, my Jason Alsholer, he's on right now watching, who he taps into some amazing companies and finds great music when we are in a pinch. But yeah, I, have always, when I sat in the music on the publishing, sorry, now the dog wants to talk, on the publishing, the label side, have always, I have appreciated the briefs coming in where they're like, hey, this is how much we have. Do you have anything that can fit in? And I love that. Just be upfront with me. Let me know. I'm not going to come and say, hey, I have this one, but do you have like $10,000 more? No, you're telling me this is how much you have and this is how much you have.
Thank you all for this amazing insight. We only have one more question and then we'll go to some questions from the audience. So the last one is like, whoever wants to answer this question, go ahead. What does, when someone asks like authentic, the word authentic, what does that mean to you? Authenticity and an ask from like a director or like from a brand, like when you hear like the word authentic, what is it that you think about? And this can be like a short, sentence, whoever wants to answer, please share your thoughts.
Okay, I mean, for me, the authenticity within a band, I think it is that sometimes a band or an artist just try a type of music or a genre that works, that is a trend, like reggaeton. Like everyone is doing reggaeton right now, but just a few embrace it. And when you embrace it and you don't want to please an audience, it is authentic. When you embrace it, like it doesn't mean that you have to have Latin roots to do reggaeton. I mean, we have David Byrne that did a Latin Rey Momo, which is amazing album, and he's not he doesn't have a Latin ancestry. You have to embrace it. You don't have to please anyone. You have to do it because music is art. So you have to do it because you really want to, and you go like you study a lot, and you do a really good research on that specific genre, and you put your heart into the music. And that is why I think it is authentic. And when a song is really authentic or an artist is really authentic, it is a hit. It doesn't matter what type of genre. It could be dark wave, cumbia, salsa, rock and roll, soul, funk, any type, and they can be huge if you embrace it.
Since Javier and I come in a pack, I'm gonna compliment his answer. I think many times when I think of authenticity in music supervision, I think about believing that the music you are using corresponds to the place and the characters and the sound, if it's credible or not, that they would listen to that kind of music. If it's well recorded, it also has that aspect to it. It's how believable or not it is to use it. It's like I'll give an example of what is the contrary thing to authenticity. It's like when they go to in an American film in the 90s, some tourists would come to Mexico in the film, and what would be sounding in the Mexican restaurant would be flamenco, because back then the cliche of what sounded in Mexico, like for many Americans, Latin music was flamenco. Was just like it wasn't just like Spanish. So that would be kind of like the contrary to authentic to me.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. There is like back in the day there was like a big disconnect between like the word like, you know, a person who's Spanish and like the connection to Latin America, but you know, that's an entire other panel, y'all. So anybody else would like to share? If not, we'll move on to audience questions. Audience questions it is. Okay, first one. For the supervisors out of the US, is it difficult to clear and license American music for your use in a different country, in this case, that being Mexico or Spain? So basically, do songs in English or like particularly American artists cost more money than Latin?
No, I mean we have like Café Tacuba or Juan Gabriel. They are like in the top of the A list, and they can be as high as David Bowie or some foreign outside Latin America. I mean, it could be, but it is not the. I mean, it is not the. We have a few exceptions, and no, we cannot see it like that. Yes, like we cannot say it like that they are like cheaper Latin projects, but it may, I mean, for David Bowie songs or for Radiohead songs, obviously, because most of their quotes come from US or Europe, the fees or the budget that US have for their films are a lot more bigger than Mexican. So when we quote for 5,000 per side for a Radiohead or David Bowie, it is a fee that probably for us is like really high, but for them there is really low.
Okay, Thank you so much. And that in regards to fees, Lynn, in regards to like the American copyright law, do you think that licensing songs in the US are more difficult because of that?
Not really. I think it all depends on where the production company is based. Of course, if it's based in the US, it's going to be more expensive, but if it's based outside and if it's based in Latin America, it's easier. Unless it's based in Argentina or Chile, which is impossible to clear anything. So sometimes it's more the difficulty of people not answering you. There are 3 places in the world that they never answer you. One is Argentina, the other one is Chile, and the other one is Italy. If you try to clear an Italian song, forget it. You need 6 months to do it because they're always on vacation, on a leave, or in a meeting. And in Argentina, it's the same. So sometimes it depends more on where the company is based, because, if you do a project that is based in Colombia, you have to go through the regional offices of anyone, if it's a major company, from the regional offices. So sometimes it's not the money. Usually it's outside of the US, which is cheaper, unless you do things in Europe, but usually it's cheaper. But the difficulty is sometimes that the scale of things to get clearances or approvals for quotes, if you ask somebody from Chile, they have to go to Argentina, and from Argentina, they go to LA or to Miami, and it takes ages to clear something. So it's more a matter of that kind of bureaucracy that gets things complicated.
Got it. Thank you so much for that insight as well. We have 2 more questions and then we will be done. The second question for you all from the audience is, how can we educate the clients on the different types of Latin sounding music or Latin music? As in, how do you guys guide them towards more specific requests? So Georgette touched on it a little bit, but anybody wants to add anything about how do you talk to your clients about like being more specific in terms of like asks for Latin music or any kind of regional? I think that it applies to like any kind of like more very specific regional or like music of specific nation or something like that.
I'll chime in, and like we did explain some of this, but I think one dynamic that's interesting in the United States, and that's the title of this panel, is the content that's coming out and shedding light on Latinos or Latinx community. And the thing is that our stories haven't been told in the U.S. for a long time. It's all been stuck in a world that was assumed, when a lot of generations don't even speak Spanish, but they said, oh, Univision handles them. Oh, the Hispanic market handles them. Oh, and so you have tons and tons of generations that got lost. And even now, I will say now, I love the films that Gentified. I like Vida, Spookies. Spookies is, Mexico. I can see the goth and emo vibe, Mexico, and that brings light to me of who I am as a Chicana, being a Cure fan, and growing up like that. But many generations have been lost, where my story actually hasn't really been told of growing up in the United States. It's almost skipped many generations. And you look back at directors who have had content forever, like Spike Lee, and you can go back to him, and you can go back to Sammy Davis Jr. even, who is actually half Puerto Rican, but leaned on his Black side for the comedy aspect, because that's how people were accepting more. And then you got Richard Pryor, so you've got all this, and you got Black schools, you got history of everything. You have all this content that this basis for content that's been made, and it hasn't been explained yet here in the States so much, and it's just starting to shed some light. And I mean, we had Cheech and Chong, and then you go to Boulevard Nights, and you got Colors, and we're all cholos all of a sudden, and it's not necessarily true. So I think part of that education is actually the content that's being made is part of educating people. They know about novelas, they know what novela sounds like, but do they know what LA punk scene was, and were there any Latinos then? And there were, and everything, and how far back do we go? And so that, when I go to my client and if they say something like that, and I'm trying to dig, it is about the story, and then trying to figure out where you're at with that story, because they're all going to be different cities. If you're stuck in the U.S., you've got San Antonio, New York, Florida, Chicago, you know, and you got in LA and San Francisco, you got all these different sounds that generated from traditional sounds from different countries that you know converse into this to what we hear now. I mean, you have Santana and Tower of Power, we're all from different countries. And I would say, sorry, the musicians of the bands were. So it's kind of, that's part of the education, is digging in. But I feel like that's overall with music in general. You know, you gotta, it's very subjective and asking questions about it. But educating is kind of pointing to content. You know, if you say, well, look at Chapo, you know, look at that show, or look at this, because people are starting to watch it. They're starting to understand, and they're starting to realize, oh, it's not all reggaeton, or it's not all salsa, or you know, did Latinos have a place in hip hop? Yes, we had Puerto Rican MCs in New York, you know, and that Charlie Bliss and all these people. But it's part of showing that and explaining that, and even explaining that within our own cultures. So because even with each other, we don't necessarily understand each other. You know, you don't have some people, you don't have a lot of Puerto Ricans listening to ranchero out in the streets. So it's more about the storyline and then going in. But it's, the more content is made and influence, and the more that we can be involved, because I can say it's still not Latinx people involved in that education, especially with music. The more that we can get involved and kind of tell our story, it's just, that's the language we need to transcend the overall education. And just like the songs are all about telling stories. So your film's got to do the same thing. And that's kind of what I'm leaning on now. You know, I have to point to references, and I'm so happy to have references finally. But
yeah, I mean, absolutely well said, and an amazing rounded answer. And I think that this panel and the fact that we're here like talking about it, it really represents like how diverse we are within the Latinx Hispanic community, how incredible, what an incredible wealth that we have, like from like growing up with our, you know, songs and rhythms, but also, you know, being influenced by the music from the world, from the US, from Europe. So I really want to thank you all for being here and for like really inspiring the next generation, because we definitely want to see more of us, you know, music supervising, more of us working in the sync industry, and really like putting like all of the heart and soul of our knowledge into these productions, that being from here, from there, and from everywhere. So we have one last question for y'all, and this is for everybody, and it's a fun one. We want to know, what was your first CD, cassette, or record that you ever owned? So maybe we'll start with Lila.
The first I owned or bought?
Well, whichever is more fun to your heart.
Oh man, that's hard. I was lucky. I was lucky to have a dad who loved music, and my mother's from Mexico, and my dad's from Michigan, Motown. But you got all the Latin sounds that came up, and he loved music. So I grew up with him bringing home from I mean, he doesn't even know how he was the basis of Art LaBelle and Chicano sound, and we both listened to Art LaBelle, and he doesn't even know where it comes from for me, but it comes from him, and then it comes from a whole side of lowriders and that whole scene, and cruising the boulevard and blasting those tunes. But the thing is like he brought home Blondie, Shauna, it's like across the board. So my first gift, my first vinyl, my own, was the Go-Go's Vacation, which is fun because it's first all girl band and punk band, right? And then but what I bought went into the store, even though The Cure was still my favorite, was Tears for Fears, their first record. And that's where I told my dad, hey, take me to Blockbuster. And it was a cassette. And I ran in and ran out. I was like, yes.
Victory, yes. How about you, Georgette?
I, like Lila, grew up with a father that had every single record known to man from all different types. My dad even had a reel-to-reel where he had like old Billie Holiday. So I grew up listening to, but I grew up in Burbank, so born and raised. My first album that I purchased myself was Music for the Masses by Depeche Mode. Yep.
Yes, thank you so much. Areli?
Yeah, so one of the cassettes that I hold dear and near is actually Shakira's Pies Descalzos. And I was born in Guadalajara. I came to the States at a very young age when I was 5 years old. And when I was going back to Guadalajara to visit my brother who was living there, we went to go visit my grandfather's tomb in Ameca, and we were walking around the market, and I just saw that cassette, and she was so striking, and I begged my brother to buy it for me, and he did, and we played it all the way back from Ameca to Guadalajara, which is about an hour drive, and it's one that I brought back with me, and I just played it all the time. And for me, being able to find a language that I was born with and loved, and and just treasure that, it was just something that just stuck with me for a long time.
Oh, I love that record. It's like, if y'all haven't heard it, that's the Shakira record to listen to. Just let's go for Joe.
I'm really trying to remember, but I think it could be my first or one of my first. I remember when I was like 9 years old, I was like, every time I passed record stores, I would see the Appetite for Destruction cover. And I think before I even listened to it, just because of the cover had like skulls, and I probably wanted to feel kind of bad. I think that was the first record I bought, the Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, back in '89.
Yes, iconic. Lynn,
Yeah.
how about you?
What was the question?
What was your first record, CD, or cassette that you owned?
Led Zeppelin. I bought Led Zeppelin and Rush Hemispheres, and an album by, I think, someone that I think he was the lover of my grandmother, whose name is Victor Iturbel Pirulí. My parents used to have an hotel in Puerto Vallarta called Posada Vallarta, and El Pirulí used to sing there. And a couple of years ago, I found that my grandmother paid for his first album. So I kind of think that, and I remember him playing in the hotel. So it's a mix of Led Zeppelin and El Pirulí.
He had a song for Veronica Castro, didn't he? A great song, yeah. I love that song.
Yes, all of the insight. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Javier.
I'm trying to remember, but I think it was Rage Against the Machine, Battle of Los Angeles. I think it was that. Yes.
Yes.
I didn't come from a background of music. My parents are that melómanos, no. So I try to find my way.
Oh my gosh. Well, this was like an incredibly diverse pool of music taste. And nobody asked me, but I'm going to say that my first CD was the amazing Australian duo Savage Garden. And yes, so anyways, y'all, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate all of the beautiful, insight that you gave us. And I'm sure that many people here are inspired to follow your footsteps and just like see themselves in you. So thank you so much. Thank you to the Guild of Music Supervisor for having me as a moderator today. And Kelsey, I don't know if you'd like to add anything else.
Yeah, just wanted to remind everybody that if you're a Guild member, we have the Danger Bird Happy Hour tomorrow. So please make sure to sign up for that. I believe it's at 4 p.m., but I could be wrong. There is a wine giveaway, so there is an incentive. And next week we have the panel for mental health and wellness, and it's open to everyone, and that is on Thursday. So look out for those. And as always, I will remind you to join the Guild of Music Supervisor as a member or as friend of the Guild. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you for everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting everybody.
Next time.